Imagine drawing a line through one of the most rugged, mountainous regions on Earth, dividing families, tribes, and historic trade routes, and then expecting it to hold for over a century. That is the reality of the Durand Line, the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. Today, this line is not just a border, it is a geopolitical fault line that is actively rupturing. We are seeing a massive surge in militant activity, devastating cross-border strikes, and a tragic rise in security force casualties. It makes you wonder, why is this region perpetually on the brink? And what are the hidden forces driving this conflict?
It is a question that requires us to look far beyond the daily news headlines. To truly understand what is happening, we have to dissect the strategic layers using analytical frameworks like PESTLE and SWOT, and ultimately look at it through the lens of game theory. When you look at the border clashes and the rise of groups like the Tehrik-i-Taliban, Pakistan, or the TTP, you realize this is not just random violence. It is a highly calculated, albeit destructive, series of moves by multiple actors who are all operating under very specific constraints and incentives.
So, let us start by unpacking those constraints. If we look at the political and economic landscape, or the PESTLE framework, what are the primary drivers behind this current escalation?
Politically, the return of the Taliban to power in Kabul in 2021 changed everything. It shifted the balance of power. Pakistan suddenly lost the strategic depth it thought it had, and instead found a neighbor that is unwilling or unable to rein in cross-border militancy. Economically, both nations are struggling. Pakistan is facing severe inflation and fiscal challenges, which limits its capacity to sustain prolonged, high-intensity counterinsurgency operations. On the other side, Afghanistan is under crippling international sanctions, leaving its economy in survival mode. In this environment, militancy becomes a viable, sometimes even lucrative, alternative for individuals with limited opportunities.
That economic desperation really fuels the social aspect of the crisis, does it not? The shared Pashtun identity across the border makes enforcing a hard border almost impossible.
Exactly. The social ties are deeper than any state-imposed boundary. Families live on both sides, and local communities have crossed freely for generations. When Pakistan tries to fence the border or enforce strict visa regimes, it creates immense local resentment. From a technological standpoint, we also see a dangerous shift. The security forces are dealing with militants who are now equipped with advanced military hardware, some of it left behind during the Western withdrawal from Afghanistan. We are talking about night vision gear, sophisticated communication systems, and high-grade weaponry. This has significantly narrowed the technological gap between state forces and insurgent groups.
It sounds like a perfect storm, where the state's traditional advantages are being eroded. If we pivot to a SWOT analysis, what are the internal strengths and weaknesses of the Pakistani security apparatus in this scenario? They have a massive conventional military, but fighting an asymmetric threat is a completely different challenge.
That is the core dilemma. Pakistan's strength lies in its conventional military capabilities, its intelligence infrastructure, and its experience in counterterrorism. But the weakness is the sheer geography of the border and the economic strain we discussed. It is incredibly costly to maintain a massive military footprint along thousands of miles of mountainous terrain. The threat is highly mobile. The opportunities for Pakistan lie in regional diplomacy, perhaps leveraging relationships with China and other regional players to pressure Kabul. But the threats are severe, particularly the risk of domestic instability if military operations lead to civilian displacement or if the economic cost becomes too high to bear.
It is a delicate balancing act. Before we dive into the strategic game theory behind all this, I want to take a quick moment to talk about what we do here. If you are enjoying this deep dive into global security and geopolitical strategy, you are listening to the right show. The New Sentinel is a podcast dedicated to providing in-depth discussions and deep dives into a wide array of topics. From the glitz and glamour of pop culture to the strategic intricacies of military operations, we cover it all. Each episode is thoughtfully crafted to offer our listeners a comprehensive understanding of the subject matter, featuring expert interviews, detailed analysis, and engaging storytelling. Whether you are a pop culture enthusiast or someone with a keen interest in global security, the New Sentinel has something for everyone. Tune in, view, subscribe, and comment to stay informed and entertained. And if you are an entrepreneur looking to reach a highly engaged, intellectually curious audience, we can help you advertise your product or service. Now, let us get back to the board.
That is actually a perfect transition, because looking at this conflict is like looking at a highly complex board game where every player is trying to anticipate the opponent's next 3 moves.
Let us talk about that game. If we apply game theory here, how do we model the relationship between Pakistan, the Afghan Taliban, and the TTP? Who is playing what hand?
Think of it as a classic, non-cooperative game with incomplete information. We have 3 main players: the Pakistani state, the Afghan Taliban government, and the TTP. For Pakistan, the dominant strategy would be to secure the border, eliminate the TTP, and have a cooperative government in Kabul. For the Afghan Taliban, their priority is regime survival, domestic legitimacy, and maintaining internal cohesion. They share deep ideological and historical ties with the TTP, so turning against them could spark an internal rebellion or drive TTP fighters into the arms of even more radical groups, like ISIS-K.
So for the Afghan Taliban, cooperating fully with Pakistan to eliminate the TTP is actually a high-risk move for their own survival.
Precisely. It is a classic prisoner's dilemma. If Pakistan and the Afghan Taliban cooperate to eliminate militancy, both benefit from regional stability and economic connectivity. But cooperation requires trust, which is entirely lacking. If Pakistan cooperates by offering concessions or aid, but Kabul defects by continuing to provide safe haven to the TTP, Pakistan loses. If Kabul cooperates by cracking down on the TTP, but Pakistan defects by launching unilateral airstrikes inside Afghanistan, Kabul loses face and internal security. Because neither side trusts the other to cooperate, they both choose to defect. Pakistan launches cross-border strikes, and Kabul allows the TTP to operate. The result is a Nash equilibrium, where both sides are worse off.
It is a tragic equilibrium. The status quo is highly destructive for both nations, yet neither can afford to take the first step toward genuine cooperation without risking too much. But what about the TTP? How do they fit into this game?
The TTP plays a spoiler role. Their strategy is to exploit this trust deficit. Every time they launch an attack inside Pakistan, they force Pakistan to react. If Pakistan reacts by striking targets inside Afghanistan, it angers the Afghan Taliban, driving the wedge deeper between Islamabad and Kabul. The TTP thrives in the friction. For them, the conflict itself is the source of their leverage. If there is peace and cooperation, they lose their sanctuary and their utility.
So, they are actively disincentivizing peace. When we look at the high casualties among Pakistani security forces, it seems the TTP is trying to raise the political cost of the war for Islamabad, hoping to force a negotiation from a position of strength.
Exactly. They want to make the occupation of the border regions too costly for the Pakistani military, both in terms of human lives and financial resources. They are playing a war of attrition. In game theory, this is like a game of chicken. Both sides are driving toward each other at high speed. The TTP is betting that Pakistan's economic troubles will force them to swerve first, perhaps by accepting a ceasefire on terms favorable to the militants. Pakistan is betting that its military pressure will eventually force the Afghan Taliban to crack down on the TTP to avoid total isolation.
But in a game of chicken, if neither side swerves, the collision is catastrophic. And we are already seeing the warning signs of that collision with the rise in cross-border airstrikes and border skirmishes between regular troops.
Yes, and the cost is paid by the people living in those borderlands. The tragedy of this strategic stalemate is that it prevents any real economic development. The region remains trapped in a cycle of securitization, poverty, and radicalization.
It makes you wonder about the long-term outlook. If the current strategies continue to yield this destructive Nash equilibrium, what breaks the cycle? Is there a wildcard factor that could shift the incentives for both Islamabad and Kabul?
The wild card is external pressure and economic reality. If regional powers like China, which has massive economic interests in the region through the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, decide that the instability is threatening their investments, they might step in. China has leverage over both Islamabad and Kabul. They can offer the Afghan Taliban the economic recognition and investment they desperately need, but only in exchange for concrete security guarantees. If the economic carrot is big enough and the stick of isolation is heavy enough, it might just shift the payoff matrix.
It is fascinating how economics and geopolitics are so deeply intertwined. You cannot solve the security puzzle without addressing the economic survival of these states.
You really cannot. Security is not just about soldiers and borders. It is about viability. When a state cannot provide basic economic security for its people, the borders become porous, and non-state actors step in to fill the vacuum.
As we wrap up this discussion, it leaves us with a profound realization. The conflict along the Durand line is not just a localized border dispute. It is a complex, multi-layered strategic game where history, identity, economics, and survival are all clashing in one of the most volatile landscapes in the world. The players are locked in a cycle where the rational choice for each individual actor leads to a collectively disastrous outcome. Breaking that cycle will require more than just military force. It will require changing the rules of the game itself, altering the payoffs, and building a bridge of trust where currently only suspicion exists. Thank you for walking us through these complex frameworks today. To our listeners, what do you think it will take to bring stability to this region? Can external players like China reshape the strategic landscape, or are we destined to see this cycle repeat for decades to come? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the New Sentinel for more deep dives into the stories shaping our world. Until next time, stay informed and stay curious.